Tonight on the Worldview Report, the WHO is planning to launch a new program aimed at controlling the world's food supply by the year 2030. They say it's all about safety. Cooking food has recently been declared bad for the environment, and the federal government is looking for a new way to eliminate it. Joe Biden's latest slip of the tongue, well, it's very revealing, as he recently referred to illegal aliens as voters. Before correcting himself, we've got the audio. A group of anti-Israel protesters from the Florida chapter of Queers for Palestine. They blocked access to Walt Disney World over the weekend, but they didn't get far with the police in Florida. Russia is breaking through the Ukrainian front lines, taking new cities, towns, and villages, while Ukraine resorts to bombing Russian oil refineries. The leader of one of the Baltic countries joins France in declaring that it is willing to put boots on the ground in Ukraine to help fight the Russians, even while acknowledging that this could lead to World War III and nuclear exchanges. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brannon Howse. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brannon Howse.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. Starting off tonight, the expose reports that the first meeting of the World Health Organization Alliance for Food Safety concluded on March 8th to support the implementation of the WHO Global Strategy for Food Safety 2022 to 2030. Participants included 64 WHO collaborating centers, UN organizations, and private donors. WHO's strategy sets targets for alleged global food safety to be reached by the year 2030. The WHO claims that, quote, currently there is no global mechanism in place to align efforts in this area and to provide innovation and support to countries in a coordinated way, end quote. Well, that's just what we need, right? More globalism, usurping the sovereignty of nations? Well, no, we don't need that. The WHO, they convened the WHO Alliance for Food Safety meeting allegedly to, quote, develop the terms of reference of the WHO Alliance for Food Safety, identifying its added value in the area of foodborne diseases surveillance, and number two, develop a draft work plan for 2023 to 2030 to help countries meet the WHO target of foodborne disease surveillance by 2030. Liberty Counsel Action summarized the initiative, stating, quote, a new plan for global governance just launched an alliance to control what you eat. The alliance will have authority over what food is being produced, how it will be produced, managed, and inspected, and where the so-called food will be distributed, end quote. This new plan uses the Global One Health approach. That's right, you heard that right. Health One, or One Health. Last year, David Bell explained that One Health is designed to combine human health with that of animals, plant life, and the entire planet, using fear of climate change, of course, to control global populations, and thus to justify restrictions on what we eat, where and how we travel, and how we move about, and eventually the impoverishment and death of millions of people. This is being pushed by an international death cult based on fear of the planet and the people who they say are poisoning it. And according to the Liberty Counsel, the One Health principle will be backed into WHO's proposed amendments to the International Health Regulation and Pandemic Treaty, due to be voted on May 27th at the World Health Assembly in Geneva. I believe it was Kissinger who said, those who control the food control the people. A group of anti-Israel protesters from the Florida chapter of Queers for Palestine blocked access to Walt Disney World on Saturday, May 11th, and they were promptly arrested. The keffiyeh-clad crew, they used their vehicles to block the Disney exit off Interstate 4 in Orlando, alleging that the company, quote, supports genocide, end quote. The protesters held banners across the ramp and chanted Free Palestine. Some fed-up drivers were seen using the shoulder of the highway to go around the demonstrators, while one angry motorist got out of his car to confront them and declared, quote, "You're losing people to your cause because of this. Think a little bit. You're causing people to actually hate you," end quote. That's what he yelled at a demonstrator who was filming him as they sat in a car after cops showed up. And that's according to footage shared on X. Watch this.
We're trying.
You actually are losing people. You are losing people to your cause because of this. Okay?
45,000
You are
dead.
losing
45,000 dead.
People
45,000
now
dead. Genocide
are
sympathizers.
because
Genocide
you guys do this
sympathizers.
bullshit.
Free Palestine. Free
This is not the
Palestine.
way. You understand that? Think a little bit. You're causing people to actually hate you.
So 45,000 dead.
The war in Ukraine is going so badly for Ukrainian military that even the likes of liberal CNN is starting to leak out the truth, at least a little bit. CNN, which up till now has been telling its viewers that Ukraine is winning, well, they now cite Ukraine's top general to explain that the situation in the northern region has, quote, significantly worsened, end quote, after Russia had captured 4 villages as it expanded its, quote, surprise cross-border offensive, end quote. This was no surprise at all. Any military analyst worth his salt knew that a Russian offensive was coming as soon as, well, the ground started drying up and firming up. A Ukrainian regional official insisted that Russia's progress was not yet significant, but admitted ground fighting in the area was spreading. Meanwhile, speaking on British television, UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron acknowledged it was a, quote, extremely dangerous moment, end quote, adding that Russia had effectively, quote, invaded Ukraine again, end quote. Well, no, Mr. Cameron, it's not a new invasion. This is what losing a war looks like. The precise goal of Russia's new push, which began in the early hours of Friday morning, well, it's unclear. It may be to create a buffer zone that's designed to reduce Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory, or possibly even a renewed assault on the city of Kharkiv, 30 kilometers or about 18 miles to the south, so reports CNN. Equally, it could be an attempt to draw Ukrainian forces away from other key Russian objectives further south, which was the explanation Ukrainian President Zelensky offered in his Sunday evening address. Quote, the idea behind the attacks in Kharkiv region is to stretch our forces and undermine morale and the motivational foundations of Ukrainians' ability to defend ourselves, end quote. That's what he said. According to the information from the Defense Ministry in Moscow, Russia now claims control over 9 Ukrainian border villages, which are clustered in 2 areas, now just a few dozen kilometers apart to the northeast of Kharkiv city. A Ukrainian military blogger said on Sunday that Russian troops had now pushed south and entered another town, though the pace of advance had slowed somewhat. Because the Ukrainians are losing so much territory to the Russians, they have resorted to the desperate ploy of drone strikes deep inside Russia. And they've been especially targeting Russia's oil refineries. Zero Hedge reports that in defiance of repeated warnings from the Biden administration, the Ukrainian military is ramping up kamikaze drone attacks on the Russian energy complex. It's a move to hamper the nation's crude oil and crude product export revenues and curtail Moscow's ability to fund Russia's economy, which is now on a 100% war footing and outproducing the West in key munitions by more than 3-1. The latest suicide drone attack struck early Sunday at one port, a large oil refinery that is in Volgograd. That's deep within the country and hundreds of miles east of the Ukrainian border. That's according to Bloomberg. The regional governor confirmed the attack in a post to his Telegram account. Quote, during the night of May 12th, the air defense and electronic warfare forces fought off a drone on the territory of the Volgograd region, end quote. Unverified claims on X said, quote, overnight, Ukrainian forces successfully struck the Lukoil refinery in Volgograd, Russia. At least one drone hit the complex, reportedly setting the refinery unit ablaze, end quote. We'll be right back after this break.
MelissaHouseBG.com. Bella Grace Elixir.
She called me today, and she told me something, and I said, you have got to tell the audience this. They need to hear this, because it's really good news for those of you that, well, are taking Bella Grace.
Well, I went to my hairdresser, and I had not told her about this product that I've been taking. When she was blow drying my hair, she said, I just noticed when I was parting your hair and fixing it that you have a bunch of new hair growth. I've been going to this lady for probably 13 years, and she's never said that to me. And I had noticed it, but for the fact that she noticed it was, I had to call Brannon right away and tell him. She just said, you've never had this like this, and it's growing, and you just have all these baby hairs growing in, and they're kind of curly. And so I just told her that what I was taking, and she was amazed. So
Bella Grace Elixir. MelissaHouseBG.com.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for joining us tonight and every night. And let me stress again, we are brought to you by you. It is vital that we have your support. Please consider going to WVWFoundation.com and making a contribution of any size. Again, we have lost some donors. We haven't lost supporters. We've lost donors. They tell us in emails. They tell us in handwritten letters. They're still supporting us. They're praying for us. They're all for us. But with the high cost of inflation today, many of them retiring, going on to a fixed income, they just don't have it in their budgets to support us financially. But they're going to continue to support us with good thoughts by promoting our organization to other people and praying for us. We appreciate that, and we totally understand. But reality is, folks, we have got to make up for the donors we're losing who, well, are in a position where they can no longer financially support us. So we do desperately need your help. Please consider going to WVWFoundation.com. Help us continue pushing out this broadcast and all the others for free. Again, we could immediately put this behind a paywall and say everybody has to pay to see it if you didn't catch it live, but we don't do that. We put it out there online at worldviewtube.com for everyone to watch free of charge and at patriot.tv. So please do support what we're doing by putting out this free educational and ministry worldview program. WVWFoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. WVWFoundation.com. Thank you. A hate-fueled revolutionary manifesto that links Columbia University's pro-terror protests to anti-colonial movements is circulating at the school, and it's bolstering claims of outside agitators being behind the protest, many of which have turned violent. The 6-page National Liberation Struggles, as it's called, proclamation was found left behind in a lab class at the embattled Ivy League institution. That's according to a Jewish student who received a copy of the report. Roy Lockman, senior counsel at the Brandeis Center for Human Rights under Law at Columbia Law School and a grad and a former New York City councilman, told the New York Post, quote, this manifesto associating Jews with all the world's ills would be an amusing parody if it weren't fueling the deadly aim of destroying the Jewish state and returning Jews everywhere to a dispossessed, defenseless people available for abuse and scapegoating as the mood arises, end quote. The document strengthens claims by New York City Mayor Eric Adams and others that outside agitators have influenced and even infiltrated groups of pro-terror protesters at the Upper Manhattan School and, of course, at other college campuses as well. An anti-Israel mob, they launched an illegal takeover of an academic building at Columbia earlier this month, forcing police in riot gear to storm the site to roust and arrest them. The manifesto, well, it starts out by stating, quote, the students of Columbia are organizing their power to demand the university divest from all companies profiting off the Israel occupation of Palestine, to end all academic affiliations with Israel, and to end Columbia's complicity with the Zionist project, end quote. The report emphasizes the goal to expand students' minds, quote, beyond the university, end quote, and join, quote, the larger struggle for the liberation of all the oppressed people everywhere. Quote, how is the student movement engaged in the larger anti-imperialist and internationalist movement in the U.S. and the world, end quote. That's what the document says. The Communist Manifesto, well, it only inflames anti-Semitism, according to Lockman. South Dakota's Republican Governor Kristi Noem was banned from the lands of 2 native tribes in her state after she made comments in March about tribal leaders. That's what the Associated Press is reporting. On Friday, the Yankton Sioux tribe voted to ban the governor from their land, following the example of another tribe just a few days before. The pair of banishments, well, which occurred within a week, by the way, of each other, it means that Noem has been banned from nearly 20% of the land in South Dakota. And she had previously been banned from the land of other Native American tribes. 3 of the 9 tribes in the state have yet to ban Noem, but the other 6 include the Oglala, Rosebud, Cheyenne River, and Standing Rock Sioux, along with the 2 newest bans. Noem instigated the tribe's ire after she claimed in March that tribal leaders were neglecting children and the poor on their reservations in order to accommodate drug cartels. That's what the AP reported. Quote, we've got some tribal leaders that I believe are personally benefiting from the cartels being there, and that's why they attack me every day, end quote. That's what Noem said at the time. Quote, but I'm going to fight for the people who actually live in those situations, who call me and text me every day and say, please, dear governor, please come help us in Pine Ridge. We are scared, end quote. The governor had previously stated that in spite of her troubles with tribal leaders, she still gets support from many people who live on the reservations. Noem addressed the cartel concerns in a post on Thursday, writing on X, quote, tribal leaders should take action to ban the cartels from their lands and accept my offer to help them restore law and order to their communities while protecting their sovereignty, end quote. Journalist Chris Hansen, he filed this report on the influence of cartels and fentanyl on South Dakota's Indian reservations. Watch this.
We know from our investigation that the vast majority of fentanyl is coming in from Mexico, the super labs there. They get the chemical base from China. It comes into a major city like Los Angeles, especially San Francisco. And now these gangs are spread out to Denver. You know, here in South Dakota, there's a whole traffic pattern from Denver where fentanyl is being brought in. Is that pretty much what you're seeing and experiencing as well?
Yes, we've dealt with the cartel already here, and where we had people from the reservation that's been killed by the cartel. You know, just recently where we had a FBI get kidnapped off the reservation from the cartel, who just got recently sentenced, and it's but they're coming in and to marry young women that are lost, marry women that don't. Not tight with their families no more, and they it's easy to manipulate them into love, and then take them as wives, girlfriends, whatever, and then they start putting it into her family, and then their family starts to sell it for them.
So it's a way for cartel members to get a foothold on the reservation.
It's through people that have addiction problems.
So they'll introduce it to someone who they're involved with romantically, their girlfriend, and then it spreads throughout the family.
Yes, because, you know, through media, a lot of these young people, whether it be males or females, they're so attracted to gang life and to that of how it portrays it, you know, to make all this money, to do all these things. And so when they feed them that fentanyl, you know, they might hand them a couple of guns, some cash, say, go do this for me, and it makes them feel like somebody. So then that's how they get involved in it and more deep. And then the next thing you know, 90% of the young people right now are doing a lot of prison time because of fentanyl.
Pope Francis continues to push climate hysteria, with the Vatican being an important contributor to anti-human globalist agenda and its perverse One Health initiative that we discussed earlier in the broadcast. Climate change, of course, has brought the world to the so-called breaking point. That's what the Pope asserted in his introduction to a 3-day climate summit to be held at the Vatican here in the month of May. The Pope wrote that he has, quote, heartfelt concerns, in quote, for, quote, our suffering planet, in quote, contending that, quote, the world in which we live is collapsing, in quote, because of humanity's failure to adequately address the crisis. The Pope said the impact of climate change will increasingly prejudice the lives and families of many persons, adding that its effects are already felt in the areas of, quote, healthcare, sources of employment, access to resources, housing, forced migrations, etc., end quote. Well, let's stop right there. Forced migrations? How is the climate changing, supposedly, which it's not changing in any way that's, apocalyptic, certainly not man-made apocalyptic climate change, where we have solar flares, and ebbs and flows. But how is this forcing anyone to illegally come to the United States and other Western countries? Well, citing the bishops of the United States, the Pope asserts that climate change, quote, is one of the principal challenges facing society and the global community, end quote, and its effects, quote, are borne by the most vulnerable people, whether at home or around the world, end quote. Indeed, San Diego Bishop Robert W. McElroy, whom Pope Francis elevated to the rank of cardinal in 2022, he's argued that while abortion is a great evil, quote, the long-term death toll from unchecked climate change is larger and threatens the very future of humanity, end quote. Both abortion and climate change are, quote, core life issues in the Catholic Church, end quote. That's what McElroy declared. But neither should be identified as preeminent. Interesting enough, Pope Francis, he has singled out the United States as particularly responsible for the climate emergency, so-called emergency. Why? Because of our so-called irresponsible lifestyle, says a man who lives behind gigantic walls and flies around on a private jet, private helicopters, and has multiple homes and wealth that is so great that even if the Catholic Church globally wanted to tally their wealth, experts say it would be impossible because it is so vast. Well, now it's time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. And we end our broadcast with a lighthearted look at the, mishaps of Joe Biden. Some may ask why we do this. But if you can't laugh at the current excuse for a commander-in-chief, then the only alternative is, to drown in despair over the state of the republic. Joe Biden shouted, "Don't jump." That's what he shouted this week for at least the 20th time as president, raising concerns on the campaign trail about his mental acuity. Breitbart reports that Biden, 81, whom special counsel Robert Hur described as a, quote, elderly man with a poor memory, end quote, often uses the bizarre phrase, "don't jump," to joke or taunt his critics. Biden typically directs his wisecracks at individuals who are standing near a ledge or on a balcony, though no video evidence shows anyone seeking to jump from their perch. He once told a person standing just a few feet away in front of him not to jump. Another time, Biden told a seated individual at a restaurant not to jump. The latest example of Biden shouting the overused joke was Wednesday after his campaign speech in Wisconsin. Looking above his head, blocking his eyes from the stage light, Biden glanced around the room and then leaned forward into the microphone and shouted, "Don't jump." Everyone in the room seemed to ignore the random comment, but Mike Davis, founder and president of the pro-Trump Article 3 Project, he told Breitbart News, quote, "Unless Biden's staff loads him up with drugs to keep him alert, he reverts back to his mental glitches, like licking ice cream cones, petting kids, getting lost on stage, and randomly spouting things like, 'Don't jump.' If we get 4 more years of Biden, we all may need to jump," end quote. Well, that does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for your support. And one way you can support us and your health is by doing what I do each and every day. I did it right before I came on the air. I took this, Bella Grace. By the way, we are getting daily, almost daily, testimonials of many of you thanking us for this because of the great results. I saw one the other day. Melissa actually read it to me. And this lady said, "We want to thank you for telling us about Bella Grace. We are 60 days into our journey taking Bella Grace and are receiving great results. Thank you. We're happy to take it and support you at the same time." And that's exactly what you're doing. When you order Bella Grace, I think you're supporting your health, but us. This is a big, big sponsor here, folks. So please consider going to MelissaHouseBG.com. Again, I take it every day. Melissa takes it every day. It includes collagen, an anti-inflammatory, and astaxanthin. Astaxanthin has lots and lots of what? Antioxidants in it to take on the free radicals. 3 powerful ingredients that work very well together. So again, the astaxanthin actually crosses the brain-blood barrier. So please, go to the website, Melissa House BG. That's how they track it, so we get credit. It is so important to our budgets. But again, I think this is a win-win. Great way for all of us to support this broadcast and our health at the same time. There are about 80 clinical trials there at MelissaHouseBG.com. So please, get a subscription and save. We get a subscription every month at our front door, so we don't forget about it, and that way we don't run out. So, MelissaHouseBG.com. Another way I think you can support us and your health is through what's called Numi. Numi is a swish. You take it into your mouth, 2 cupfuls, swish it around for about 3 minutes. Then you can spit it out or swallow it. And it's loaded with what's called glutathione. Glutathione is a powerful molecule that detoxifies your cells. What could have taken place the last couple of years that might want to have you detoxing your cells? Well, again, don't take my word for it. Just put into a search engine, glutathione, and look at all the things. I mean, I read a study the other day that glutathione could remove mercury from your brain. It could help slow the growth or the condition of Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you what I've read from the studies on glutathione. In fact, there are about 162,000 studies on glutathione at PubMed. So again, you don't have to take my word for it. Just do your own homework. And then go to Neumi.com/house1, Neumi, Neumi.com/HOWSE and the number 1. All right? And then, please consider going to twc.health/Brannon. Look at the top of the page, and it'll say kits. You can get the emergency kit, emergency medical kit. I have one for every family member. Or you can get their latest one, which is the contagion emergency kit. So if the government pushes bird flu out on us, Dr. Thorpe says you're going to want to have this contagion kit. It's going to have the meds you need. You don't want to be in a spot where you need these medications and the government has shut them down or there's just not enough. You don't want to fool around with this. Do what I've done. I'm getting a contagion kit for every one of my family members. Again, if you use the URL twc.health/Brannon, not only will you save money, but it also helps, again, support this broadcast. 3 great ways I've just listed where I think you can support this program and yourself at the same time. twc.health/Brannon. All right? Thanks again for watching. Till next time, I'm Brannon Howse. May God save America. Take care.